All right. I appreciate it. I just wanted to call to order the March 18th, 2024 Broadband Committee meeting. Tonight is more of a discussion, not a business portion. We've basically switched off on our last couple meetings to just kind of almost, these are just discussions to keep the everybody up to date on what's going on, so that way there's not as much distance or time between updates. So I don't think we have any minutes from the last one because there was no business conducted. So we really don't have any minutes to go over. David, did you have a copy of the agenda that you could bring up, or did you not have an agenda for tonight?
I think we'll probably just, since this is just an informational program tonight, we'll just kind of follow that email format that I sent you earlier,
Okay.
with just a couple of additions, because more or less, we're not even really conducting a meeting. Now, next month is the normal business meeting. So it will be back to the same format starting next month. Jason, do you have access to a calendar that you could let us know what date that will be?
No, 1 second.
And see, Jason Jacobus has also joined us. So while he's getting that information, I figured tonight what we could do is just go back and give everybody who may be interested just a brief history of broadband in Caroline County, or broadband expansion efforts in Caroline County. My name is David Sadler. I'm the IT director for Caroline. I started with Caroline County in 2016 as the information systems manager at that point. Shortly after starting, I was assigned a task of coordinating the broadband expansion efforts in the county. So we started looking at what it would cost to bring internet to the entire county. And at that time, we estimated the cost to deliver internet or incentivize companies, the total cost of the projects to deliver internet to all parts of the county that were unserved at that point was estimated to be around $20 million. So right off the bat, we realized $20 million is a large pill to swallow, and it'd be very difficult for a county of our size to come up with funding for $20 million at that time. So instead, we decided to start pursuing efforts to obtain funds within the VATI, the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative program, to help incentivize providers to expand in the Carolinas. Now, providers basically, when they look at an area, if the population density and they look at it as passings per mile is not high enough, then it doesn't make sense for them to expand into an area. The cost to expand is higher than they would ever receive back in funds, so it just doesn't work for them. So in areas that have less than that magic number, whatever it is, the counties or the companies have chosen, have to incentivize those companies to expand in areas where the population is less. So at that point, we chose VATI as our vehicle to help fund the incentives for these companies to expand. The first application that we applied for was in the 2020 grant cycle. This was a regional effort with Caroline County and other counties that were located over in the northern neck. Because that program was very condensed, we had a limited time to come up with a project and submit. So we reached out to Atlantic Broadband at that time, and they picked, they had already worked on an area over around Panola to expand. And so we were able to use that area that was already engineered out for that application. However, the efforts in that 2020 grant cycle was unsuccessful. And DHCD said that the biggest reason why that failed, not only for Caroline, but that the other counties in Northern Neck, was because of the limited areas that we were covering. So we took a detailed look and met with the state after the 2020 grant cycle failed. So we looked at the mistakes that were made and ways that we could strengthen another application. So in VATI 2021, we decided to enter into another regional application with other counties, Matthews, Middlesex, and two other counties, but and another regional effort. Again, most of the counties that were in that were out on the northern neck. But we did learn from our mistakes in 2020, and we expanded the areas to cover 2 areas in Caroline County that were key to building the as the first steps to expanding broadband throughout the county. So we picked a couple of areas that we could easily build off of. So that way we knew the long-term goal was to reach more of the county than what that project was. However, we had to start somewhere. That was a regional effort. It was a success. We were granted the money by VATI, and the project's now basically construction is complete. And so those connections in the Port Royal area and the Balti area, 2 areas which we strategically picked to build off of in future projects, people in those areas can now sign up for internet. So again, we went back in VATI 2022, and midstream in the 2022 process, the goal of the VATI program was expanded to try to fund counties that were attaining what is called universal coverage for all unserved areas of their counties. Because this change took place, and there was a change that took place mid-application, and we were working already with Breezeline, who had already designed out the project east of 95. However, west of 95, we were working with Comcast, and that change took place in too short a time frame for us to be able to get them to cover the remaining parts of their project area to attain that universal coverage. But because of the amount of effort that both companies put in the application, we went ahead and submitted in 22. However, we were scored down in the scoring process because of parts of the western area were not covered, and we could not attain that universal coverage. So we lost points in the application process, and it was unsuccessful. Following the footsteps of 20, we again met with the state, looked at the mistakes that were made, and considered ways to strengthen that. One of the ways that we decided to strengthen it is rely on this committee, the Broadband Advisory Committee. That's made up of citizens from all areas of the county, as well as subject matter experts in internet service providers, engineers, network engineers, different people that were assigned to the committee. And we were appointed to the committee by the Caroline County Board of Supervisors to serve as an advisory committee to the board. So that committee then was able to consider options as far as delivery media, areas to cover, et cetera. So we were now pulling from the expertise of county residents to help with this project. So due to the difficulty that we had in working with Comcast, we went out to request for a proposal, RFP, to find a partner that would help us west of 95. Now, the project area east of 95 had already been designed out, or on paper anyway. So we didn't make any changes there. However, we went out RFP. Comcast was one of the people that actually submitted an application. However, this committee ranked the proposals and settled on Verizon as the potential partner for areas west of 95. So the VATI 2023 application was a county effort using BreezeLine and Verizon. Now remember, BreezeLine used to be Mid-Atlantic Broadband, and then MetroCast, and now BreezeLine. So three different names, same partner that had been with the county since day one and trying to expand coverage in the county. So VATI 2023, using those partners and also using the fact that we were able to deliver universal coverage with those projects, in 23 we were successful. The projects are underway at this moment. Construction's underway by Verizon. BreezeLine, being a much larger project, has started permitting and will start construction within the next couple of weeks. So construction will be underway there as well. Now, the two projects are separate, and the Caroline West project is an 18-month project. Due to the size and the scope, it's a smaller project, so they have 18 months to complete it. The clock has already started in October, so 18 months from October, that project has to be completed. BreezeLine, being a much larger project, again, the clock started in October. They have 3 years to complete that project. So we're already 6 months into that. Now, I think it's important for us to discuss that in the application process, because we were unsure of the amount of funding that was going to be available or whether it was going to be necessary for that project to actually be broken up into multiple year awards, the application broke that project up into different areas. There was a phase one, a phase two, and a phase three of that. Anticipating that if the project could not be funded in 1 year, that maybe we could get funding in year one, more funding in year two, and year three to finally complete the project. However, the 2023 effort was successful. The money existed in the state to fund the entire project. So we received funding for 100% of the project in 1 year. So we still have some people that are unclear about, they'll ask which phase of the project they're in, if they're in the BreezeLine project. Basically, there are no more phases. All projects, all parts of that area will be a phase one. Now, of course, there's going to be early areas that they will start in just based on permitting, not only permitting poles, but also permitting for like railroad crossings and how quick we can get across those railroad tracks. So currently, the plans are in the next few weeks to start construction in the Sparta area of Caroline County, as well as Route 17 north of where the project ended last, but then shortly following up down south of Bowling Green towards Hanover County. So that's where the plans are, at least initially, to start that project. Once completed, this project will serve all designated unserved areas of Caroline County. So that's the big thing. We will attain that universal coverage. Now, we know that there may be small pockets of houses that will have to have other solutions to actually get to, because the problem that we have is that with the footprint of Comcast being so unclear, we had to estimate their footprint. So based on what they've declared they serve, based on what we could determine by riding those project areas and looking for existing cable connections. So that was just an estimate based on a lot of work and just as accurately as we could get it. So we know that there may be issues, and we'll work through those as we identify to hopefully find a solution for those areas as well. So that's kind of the history of the broadband expansion effort in Caroline County. Jason Barlow or Jason Jacobus, you got anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up as best I would.
So just know that it's been a long process. The award that was given last year was not the first that we had ever heard of it, and not the first effort that we'd done. It's been a long process. Looking back, the areas that we picked for 21, perfect areas. Building off of those areas will allow service to expand from the areas that we picked, and make it quicker for the citizens to be able to get that service as quickly as possible. What about you, Jason Jacobus? You got anything you want to add? All right.
There, but no, well said on the timeline.
All right. So, Jason Jacobus, if we look back at, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Gave me plenty of time. April 15th, you told me to look it up, will be our next meeting.
Okay, so April 15th will be the next business meeting of the large group. Tonight, again, is just more or less an informal discussion. Broadband, trying to answer questions that we see on a regular basis, and bring everybody up to speed and keep everybody informed of the progress that's being made. Jason Jacobus, if we look at VATI 2021, one of the big parts of that project, the funding came down for the Affordable Connectivity Program from the federal government to help subsidize some of the connections for people that were in need, and subsidizing in need of internet, and subsidizing those connections if they had, if they met a qualification. Well, one of the qualifications is, at that time, if you had a student in Caroline County Public Schools, you automatically were qualified for ACP. Jason, did you want to bring us up to speed on that project kind of winding down, and how has it affected you?
Yeah, it's winding down. So the banner on their website says the Affordable Connectivity Program stopped accepting new applications and enrollments on February 7th, 2024. The last fully funded month of the program is April 2024. So imagine with how, in my arrangement, it's, what a prorated bill. So I'll get billed the month afterwards. So maybe my May bill will be the last one with the discount. So maybe in June, we'll see that change. So I'll report back in June unless something happens, but I haven't heard any other news of it being refunded. So that's where we're at with that. I'll start looking into the LECAP program, Line Extension Customer Assistance Program. And that's a Virginia program, not a federal program. I don't know. I need to study the, income limits and the things and the guidelines for that application. So we'll see if it's as, a whiz bang deal like ACP was for folks in the county. Probably not, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so LECAP is a state-funded program, and it is based on income. Now, the purpose of that program, excuse me, is to fund extension of existing lines to houses. For example, I know a lot of people are constantly telling us that, hey, I live in a Comcast area, or I live in a Breeze Line area, and it's already down my road, but when I called to get a connection, I'm being quoted anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 to bring that cable or fiber down my driveway. So the LECAP program is designed to help those people. We'll get some links to the LECAP application. If you're in that situation, we've already worked with that to extend lines to some people in Caroline. We're actively working and looking for areas that can help. So if you are in need of some assistance getting the lines from an existing provider to your house, then use that broadband inquiry form and send us a question. Now, again, this is existing areas. So you can't use LECAP to bring internet into your area. It's only used to like extend to single houses, that live too far from the road to get a connection otherwise.
Okay, I got it. So LECAP is only that installation assistance, not a month-to-month service assistance, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yep, that is correct.
Okay.
And so, if you live 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet from the road, this is how you can possibly get some assistance building out your driveway. Now, that being said, both providers in 23 have already submitted their list of addresses, and 1,500 feet or more, or even a little more than that, they're going to serve those addresses at no additional construction cost. So
down the driveway, no additional construction costs.
Correct.
From the road to the house itself, great.
Correct. And so it's based on addresses. If your address is in the database and in that project, you will get internet regardless of how long your driveway is, because they've already committed to bring you internet with no additional cost. So that's a huge benefit to everyone by doing that. So anything you wanted to add to that, Jason Barlow?
No. Again, I think you touched all that right online too.
Well, let's bring everybody up to date with where we are with the two projects. VATI 2023 is the project that we're currently involved in and working in every day. It's broken into two areas, Caroline West and Caroline East. Now, we've always said in this committee, and we've always been really careful about statements that we make. Caroline West, if you're not serviced by Comcast, your address should be served by Verizon. If Comcast is not in your, hasn't designated you as being served. So if you're west of 95 and you don't have service and can't get service, your provider will be Verizon. If you're Caroline East, it will be BreezeLine. Now, the VATI project in itself is not designed, it never has meant to be a vehicle for funding competition. In other words, if you already have Comcast, will VATI help pay for another provider to come into your area so that they can compete? No, it will not. That's not the purpose of VATI. It's not the purpose of the federal funds that are coming down from the federal government. At no point does the federal or state government at this point fund competition. So if you have a provider, you already have a provider, VATI will not bring another provider in so you have a choice between two. It's very, very limited. 10% of the project area is allowed to be what they call overbuilt. Yeah, and that means that if Verizon needs to run fiber down a street to get to its connection, and there already happens to be Comcast, they can go down that street to get to the rest of their connections, but they can't actively go out and look for new subdivisions to go into that already have Comcast with the funding from VATI. So there's been some confusion. Again, we want to be very clear. VATI 2023 is not designed to bring you another provider so you have a choice. It's to serve the people that have no options. So I wanted to clear that up. That was a question that came in on the broadband inquiry form, so we wanted to make sure we were clear with that. So continuing on with that, Caroline West, the Verizon area. As of our last meeting with Verizon late last week, 44 miles are constructed. And with Verizon, they always lag behind on these numbers that they're reporting as constructed, because the number that they show have been completed, they've been spliced, and they're ready to go. So, I keep telling the Verizon rep every week at our meetings, I know there's more than 22 or 44 miles in the ground because I ride these project areas and I know that I'm riding more than 44 miles to look at them. So Verizon is actively putting fiber in the ground. They already have 44 miles constructed and spliced, ready to go. Just know that when they reach 100% of construction on the fiber, they still have to get that head-end equipment, the equipment that will be pushing the signal into that fiber completed, and that will take some time. So even if they finish the construction next week, they still have to get that head in, and they're not going to finish next week. But over 99% of all addresses to be served in that western area have been released to construction. So they're already designed. The design is complete, and they've been handed over to construction. All the permits are in place. There's about 5 addresses that have yet to be designed out, and that's all they have left to design. And that project will be 100% design and 100% released to the contractors. If you live in Western Carolina, you already know that there's a lot going on. I've counted as many as 8 or 9 or 10 crews working simultaneously in different parts of that area. So it's really amazing to see the amount of fiber that's going into the ground. Switching over to Carolina East, the final design is still in progress because it is a large area. They've gotten some of the areas completely designed. However, there's still areas left to be designed. Permits have been applied for from Rappahannock Electric Co-op for pole make ready. And those permits are very, very slow coming back. It's very slow response from REC. I think the last report I had was 26 permits had been applied for in late December. 0 had been returned back from REC.
What's the holdup with that? Is that just the sheer amount that they're doing? Because REC's footprint is in multiple, jurisdictions and counties doing this type of fiber run, and what does cable make ready mean?
So cable make ready means if they go to a pole, that I think it's like it has to be a certain number of feet. So let's just use 18 feet. So the cable can't be lower than 18 feet. Well, if they get to a pole and there's not enough room to get that cable in below the power section of the pole, it'd still be 18 feet above the ground, then Breezeline has to get a permit and pay the cost of putting a taller pole in so that they can get, the correct distance from the ground. So, and that's expensive and apparently very slow. So we're continuing to monitor the REC permit process to see where we stand with that. Breezeline is saying that that's not going to stop construction on the project. They have a lot of underground that they can turn over to contractors, and they'll start doing that when VDOT permits and everything else are back. The VDOT permits on the west side have been on time, and the VDOT permits on the east project are also running well. So they're not a holdup. The 2 concerns that we have and that we identify, because we have to identify any areas of possible delay to the state each month with our monthly report. 2 possible areas of delay have been identified in the Eastern Carolina East project. One is the slow response of Rappahannock Electric with the pole make ready work, and 2 permits at that time. At the time of the last report, the permits from CSX was running behind because we were having trouble finding a contractor. Now, since that report was filed with the state, we have landed on a contractor. We're in the process of finalizing the contract with them, and the contractor funds have been authorized for the project to move forward. Once that contract is signed, they'll get a notice to proceed, and the work can begin on those railroad crossings to take fiber. Or the project is actually taking conduit under the railroad tracks so that the provider breeze line can come back later and run the fiber under those tracks. We identified very early on that the length of that process at that time was considered to be 18 months. So back in 22, we started talking about these railroad crossings. When we were unsuccessful in the Batty project in 22, we continued to move forward with that process because we knew it. Eventually, we were going to need those. So we continued to move forward, and it's a good thing we did because an application process has started almost 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. We just received the permits in November of this year. So we went ahead and continued through because in a project that has to be completed in a timeline like 3 years, if you were to start that project and apply for those railroad crossing permits, and the delay was 2 to 2.5 to 3 years, right off the bat, you're not going to be able to complete your project on time. So those railroad crossings, if they go in, and again, they're affecting a little bit the project because what will happen is breeze line will have to start in areas that would not be affected by those railroad crossings not being in place. However, we can get those if we can get those railroad crossings in place shortly, then it'll allow breeze line to go ahead and pick up with construction, and the overall project will not be delayed. So we're continuing to monitor that. At this point, it does not appear to be a reason for delay. However, the application or the monthly reports with DHCD require us to identify areas of possible concern. And that was a process. That areas of possible concern actually started back in 21 with that project, because when COVID hit, we had massive shortages, supply chain problems, nuts, bolts, connectors, pedestals, vaults, just any parts of the project we were having trouble getting because of COVID was going on. So the state, halfway through that project, and then prior to 23, added that identify areas of possible concern to the monthly report. So the areas of possible concern west of 95 in the Verizon project, as reported to the state at the last report, was there are no concerns at this point. That project is on schedule to complete on time, if not a little early. So that project is going well. Just going back to what we discussed a little bit earlier, back in 2016, 2017, we estimated the cost of broadband to every house in Caroline to be around $20 million. And we knew that was a large target to hit. The actual cost when 2023 is complete will be more in the neighborhood of $31 million. So there's been some inflation, but then that's a lot of it that caused that. The $20 million was just a rough estimate. So just to give the citizens an idea, if Caroline County were to try to do this on its own without the assistance of companies that are doing the work, or the state of Virginia through the Department of Housing and Community Development, we'd be looking at a $31 million bill, which would cause a huge funding issue. So that's kind of where we're at. That's about all I've got. It takes us up through Batty 2023. Have you guys got anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think you've touched on everything inside of this email that you had sent me. I don't see anything left out that we had discussed about. So
I got a question. With all these delays and stuff and the 18-month deadline, what happens if we're up against the time and they're not done? Does that mean that funding wouldn't be executed, or they wouldn't be able to submit? What could we run into a scenario where they're not done, but they know that they won't get paid, so everything just stops?
What'll happen is, in basically the 18 months for the Caroline West project and 36 months for the Caroline East project, they have 36 months to complete that project, get the final invoicing out. So, for example, in 21, even with COVID, it was an 18-month project. So, and it ran right up to the very end. Construction actually completed before that 18 months. However, the final round of invoicing had not come out. So we had to apply for an extension through the DHCD, and it was granted. So that would be the same thing that would happen this time if, for example, the final bill hadn't been sent out, or delays caused it to go beyond. Then at that point, we would have to apply for an extension with DHCD. So, I mean, there is an avenue to still accomplish the project. It's just more difficult. So that's what we're trying to avoid. And at this point, neither project is in any risk of having to apply for an extension. So, we are on a good timeline to get both projects completed at this point. Even though construction in Caroline East is not going to start for another week or two, it's still right on schedule. So right now, everything is on schedule. No foreseen needs to apply for an extension. That was a good question, though, Jason.
No, thank you for that clarification. Just, yeah. So I think you've gotten rid of all my doubts and concerns. Thanks.
And that's the whole purpose of us meeting in between regular meetings. Just try to get the word out, answer questions. We're constantly getting questions in on the broadband inquiry form, and I appreciate everyone in the county that's interacting with us on that form. It's a great place to, for example, drop your address in, make sure you're on that project list. Ask a question about timeline, although right now we don't have a lot of timelines, but feel free to send those inquiries in. We appreciate every single one of them. And it allows us to communicate directly with citizens that may have questions. So, Jason Barlow, when did you say our next meeting was?
Tax day, April 15th.
April 15th. So also know that right now the Broadband Advisory Committee is planning to be at the county fair. We'll have a display set up throughout the fair, but we will actually be on site on Friday and Saturday to meet with people and answer questions and discuss the project. And so, we look forward to it. If you can get out there, look for us. We'll be glad to discuss any issues. And by then, we'll have more progress going, so we'll be able to report on a little bit more. So, and we'll discuss this more at our April 15th meeting. Make sure that we have coverage for that. And I think that's about it for tonight, unless you guys have anything else you want to add.
I was going to bring up something that I saw in the news. So I know that there's been a lot of talk with Starlink and everything else. The one thing that, and again, the only reason I'm bringing this up is we generally talk about something with Starlink almost every month because things are changing continuously and constantly with them. The FCC on the 13th, so 5 days ago, actually declined Starlink's bid to lower the orbit of the satellites that they have to potentially combat some of the latency and get it under 20 milliseconds, which is what they want to do. Based on the article that I read and the information that I've gone over, again, it's only as good as the information that I have in front of me. The FCC has this information, and we can actually, maybe get the more detailed information. But Starlink was trying to lower their the satellites to 340 to 360 kilometers in that range. And the FCC did not want, or the rule is that they can't lower it below the orbit of the International Space Station's lowest orbit, which is 370 kilometers. Or I'm sorry, kilometers, yeah, kilometers. They declined that for them to be able to lower it. So I'm guessing SpaceX Starlink is going to go back to the drawing boards to see how they can reduce the latency. I honestly have been able to play video games without a problem, multiple people in my house, without seeing any major issues.
And both of us at the same time, on Starlink.
Yeah, you and I both playing, with my son also playing. So 3 of us on Starlink, and we didn't have any issues, no drop packets, anything like that. So it was actually pretty cool to see it seamlessly switch over multiple people on Starlink playing video games. There was an issue with one of the video games I was playing, and that was because it was when you connect from Starlink from here, it says your point of presence, which is your entry point into the internet, is at in New York. And apparently I went to Down Detector, and New York was actually having an issue on the gaming platform that I was playing on at that given point in time. So that's why it actually went out. And I was not able to connect to it, but some of my other friends that were here locally in the Richmond on fiber connections were able to connect. So you just have to remember that, with Starlink, you are going out of New York as the point of presence. And as of right now, there's not really an easy way to change that. You can contact Starlink support, but it's interesting to try and get them to approve that, to move your point of presence, and they can switch you back at any point in time. So any questions on that from you guys?
Jason, I've heard that one of the other ways that they were looking to try to assist with that latency issue was establishing more points of presence in different states. Have you heard anything on that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been also looking at that I was going to cover too is the other option for them to do that is, as you can tell, so for your ping time, it's measured from basically an acknowledgement packet that things say, hey, I'm here, things look good, is going from your computer up to your satellite, up to outer space, back down to a basically a receiving end, which then ties into the fiber that goes back to your point of presence, which then goes out to, wherever it needs to for your ping, and then makes the round trip. Right now, the ping is running probably around 30 to 40 milliseconds. I can actually run a speed test as we speak to see what my ping time is. Give me 1 second.
And just know that the ping time for the geosynchronous satellite services that offer internet is anywhere from 800 to 1500 milliseconds.
Right. So I just ran a speed test, and mine is running at 34 milliseconds for an acknowledgement packet. So one of the things that Starlink is actually looking to do is either take those receiving stations and move them closer to the point of presence, or removing them completely and putting them actually at the points of presence. So that's currently what they're looking at to try and help reduce the ping times. I don't know how quickly that's going to be or when that's coming, but I know that they're eagerly looking at this to try and increase the performance. There is one thing that I'm currently looking at, because I am on the original beta testing dish. So I've got the round dish rather than the rectangular dish. There is talk of some of the beta dishes actually becoming obsolete at some point in time with some of the newer satellites up there. So I might have to actually switch mine out for one of the newer dishes in order to take advantage of some of the newer satellites that are being launched. That's just rumor right now. There's no confirmation on that, but I am keeping a close eye on that, because that would require me to have to switch out my dish for a newer dish. There is no talk at this point of the rectangular dishes. Mine is the older round dish. Again, that's just what I'm hearing on the streets. Nothing has been confirmed, or I have not received any emails from Starlink SpaceX at this point to confirm that or require me to have to switch dishes.
So basically, this committee got together and discussed possible, I guess, almost band-aid solutions to help people that were in an extreme bind. Of course, when COVID hit, the 4G LTE connections got so overloaded that people using hotspots really had difficulty. We looked at the different solutions that were available, and while we're not a commercial for Starlink, it still continues to be a very strong solution to help you get internet service into areas that otherwise are not served. That being said, even Elon Musk has been straightforward in a lot of his statements, is that if you have a fiber connection available to you, go fiber. If you have a cable TV connection, internet service available to you, go that way. Hardwire appears to be the solution. I think Starlink is aiming to be the provider for areas that aren't served or can't be served. And they've got a lot of other really cool stuff on the horizon with Starlink. So I think it's still a strong company that is delivering well on its promises to people. So it is a good solution for people to be able to use. I thought it was kind of neat, guys, that on the Starship launch, the third launch, they were actually showing video of the rocket as it was getting ready to enter orbit, and actually when it started coming back down, and those videos were delivered from the Starship to Starlink satellite systems and back down to Earth. So we actually got to watch video all the way through, which was, watching live video being streamed as the rocket was going through space was really, it was amazing. It was quite a feat. So
Yep.
it's a cool service, and it definitely is a solution. We'll continue to try to bring people as much of an update as far as timelines to help make that decision. But if you're in a situation where you need to work from home, or you have students that need to go to school remotely, Starlink is one solution that can be considered, because we know that no matter which provider you're talking about, they've all had trouble with their 4G LTE service being overloaded. The times have changed as COVID was in place and schools were closed during the day. Daytimes was getting just loaded up. Now that school's back in session, the 4G LTE carriers seem to load up in the evenings. So just know that there are challenges, but the Starlink appears to be a good short-term solution, and we're working every day to try to get a long-term solution available to everyone.
And the last thing I was going to update, and that's good information, David, that in no way, shape do we endorse Starlink or SpaceX in this. It's just I'm speaking from my own personal experience, using the product for both work, play, and business. One of the other things that is rumored, because of with the Starship launch, and they were able to get it up to space and they were able to get it into orbit, there is talk of the next Starship whenever that launches. There's no dates or anything like that. But there are rumors that they might actually put some V3 dishes on it, since this one actually went up with no payload at this point. But there is rumors that in the future they might actually, instead of sending it up blank, but it'll send up with Starlink version 3 dishes or satellites, which are a lot bigger, which the reason they have to have Starship and to launch those to make it worthwhile. And the capacity is so much more through those. So we would actually potentially see an uptick in the amount of bandwidth that you would actually see through the star or through the satellites at that point in time. So,
all right. So basically, if you have a question, if you live in Caroline County and you need to know whether you're going to have internet, the broadband inquiry form. If you live in Caroline and you need internet right away and you'd like to talk to us about our experience with Starlink because the county tested as well, then we'll be glad to discuss that with you as well. So just the broadband inquiry form is the best way to reach out to us. And if you guys don't have anything else, then I guess we will talk again on the April the 15th.
all right. I'll see you guys then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jeff.